over here. It's good to see all of your faces. I'm just kind of scrolling through to see who's here and how. Some familiar names, and luckily, I don't know most of you, which is fantastic. Um, and it's really great to be here with so many people and to have this opportunity to speak. So basically, we will be talking about how can civil society organizations, how can campaigners reach a wider audience, get to more people, activate more people, because essentially what we've seen is that there is a limited, very highly informed public, um, who know what the European Union does, who know what the Conference on the Future of Europe is, that knows what participatory democracy is and cares a lot about it. But then there are many, many people out there who simply have no idea about it, and they could be anything from engineers and biochemists to bus drivers, um, and cleaners, or government employees, or teachers, or nurses, or doctors. They could be anyone, but they just don't know about what the EU does, or what this concept of participatory democracy is. So this is the question is, how do we communicate with them, and how do we make them aware and activate them? So just to take a minute or two, I'm going to be hosting this together with Leonardo, who's here from Humans, and Jan from Pulse of Europe, who's on technical support. So thank them as well. Um, my name is Omri, and I'm the managing director and one of the co-founders of Alliance for Europe. And Alliance for Europe is like a civic startup. We're a non-profit that started 2 years ago. And what we would like to do is activate citizens towards a more democratic, more sustainable Europe, and away from this authoritarian nationalism and populism that we've been seeing on the rise, that we saw a very ugly version of in the US. Last week, but we've been seeing it growing all over Europe and all over the world for a long time now. What we would like to do as Alliance for Europe is to create coalitions between different sectors of society. So civil society and the nonprofit sector, academia, the arts, media, business, decision makers, and so on, to be able to create a larger impact. One of the tools that we've developed is the European Hub for Civic Engagement, which is essentially an online platform that allows for more cooperation among civil society, finding more information, being able to coordinate campaigns across Europe. And this is part of the discussion that we're going to have here. Um, and so we'll also build on here the discussion that we already had in the previous group, and we'll try and develop some ideas together. So the concept here is that you are not just observers, you are not just participants, but you are leading and shaping this discussion. So with this, I'm going to throw it over to Leonardo to explain a little bit about humans, artificial intelligence, or AI, and those kinds of tools, just to give you a bit of a taster about what we're going to be talking about. So, Leonardo, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Omri. Thank you again for allowing me to share my experience in humans as an activist and a campaigner, a fundraiser. Together with all the activists in humans, we decided to invest in a tool based on AI. Of course, AI is one of the major global issues in the world, but also in the European political agenda. And of course, it's a matter of regulation, it's a matter of new policies on new technologies, but AI instruments do exist already. Of course, they are um, very used in direct marketing, customer care operation, in for-profit organizations, and so we wondered, why not using AI also to increase engagement, also to be able to communicate and try to personalize as much as possible communication with activists from all over Europe who need to be aware of the instruments that are available to a European level and also at the local level to participate in democracy and to try to spread and to fight for their cause. So we decided to use an instrument like chatbot. A chatbot, of course, uses artificial intelligence and try in a conversational form to give some basic information and to orientate the person through all the legislation, local or supranational. I'm going to share the website, the landing page on which we loaded today this chatbot. Of course, it's a very young artificial intelligence and the algorithm needs to be trained. It needs interactions in order to be able to give more accurate and focused responses. And of course, it allows people to get information, but it allows also people to get involved in this project. As organization, for instance, you can give your contribution to load more responses and share your experience on participatory democracy in Europe and in your country, and allow us to enrich the responses and allow people like are in your same position of, as activists to get more and more information and be involved, and also to be involved in your organization. So feel free also to use the emails you find on the webpage to get in touch with us and ask any question about CITBot, that's how the instrument is called, and feel free also to give suggestion and to also volunteer to make this a reality in your organization and to embed these instruments in your website, for instance. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leonardo. So this was a bit of a taster of the kind of things that we might be talking about in terms of how we include more people, reach different audiences. Just to lay some ground rules for the discussion. As with the earlier sessions, essentially just remember that in order to include more people, we need to give more time. So please be concise when you speak. So if your intervention goes way over a minute and a half or so, I will ask you to wrap it up. But at the same time, we're all here to learn from each other. So, you know, feel free to tell us who you are, what you do, plug your work, feel free to promote. And it would be great if we, you know, have a collection of cool initiatives and great ideas. So please don't be shy. And if you would like to speak, you can either raise a hand, you know, on the hand function that you might know, or otherwise just post in the chat that you would like to speak by writing hand or writing your comments. And feel free to also add in the chat whatever else you want. And I'm already seeing a few hands up here. So Ole, go ahead, take it away. Unmute yourself because you're still muted.
Yeah, but I couldn't see that I had a hand up. There should be no hand. Where the heck is that function?
Maybe it's left over from a previous.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But you can still tell us, you know, what catches your interest about this question of what are the barriers for more people to get engaged, and how do we as campaigners reach them, raise awareness, activate more people? Okay, so Ole, let me know if you're going to speak, but otherwise,
okay.
Gerald, I see that you have a hand as well.
Yeah, I do.
Can't get that hand away. No.
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead, Gerald.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I'm very pleased to see such a great audience of different NGOs finding together the way to citizens take over initiative, which I very, very much appreciate. But honestly spoken, all these NGOs are rooted in national laws. So what we need is, we should think to go beyond national structures. And therefore, my plea is, and what I am fighting for since more than 10 or 15 years, is for a European association statute, so that all the citizens of Europe, no matter if they are French, German, Polish, Portuguese, Swedish, Estonian, can join on European level to create associations. This will make the people feel more European, also in legal terms. And that is really, really important, because we are all talking about participation, self-empowerment, European civic rights. But I have had the experience that all these discussions are not going beyond this, the question of structures and the question of law. And that is what we also need. We also have to think and to talk about legal structures. And therefore, I would like to ask you to support the idea of a European association statute. We have in the European Parliament, due to my and some other people's very intensive lobbying in the last European Parliament term, we have now the Vice President of the URI committee, who has been elected rapporteur on this issue. But very, very important is, we need the support of the European civil society. And to make it really clear, we do not have a European civil society, we have civil societies in Europe.
Yeah, this is a very important point, yes.
Okay, I come to the point, and please,
sure.
I urge you to support the European Parliament and the European civil society organizations to push for a European association statute. Thank you very much.
Yes, no, thank you. This is a very important point, and feel free to post the link in the chat. So then, following again the hands, and I'm looking at the discussion in the chat as well. Cesare, would you like to come in?
Thank you so much. So, as you have seen, I've already taken the initiative to speak a little bit before, but I'd like to speak again because there's really so much more to be said. So I'll try to make it quick. Basically, Citizen Assembly is a new kind of initiative, but essentially it's a subsidiary of a new political party that we're building. It's called the International Logic Party, because it's international, it's logical, and our goal is for the people to control all the governments in the world, which the people don't. We have oligarchies and tyrannies pretty much all around. But anyways, the International Logic Party does not itself represent any ideology, and it never will. Instead, we use the networking platform Agora, like I said, where everyone develops their own political philosophy. It's essentially crowdsourcing ideas from the people. As the people support various ideas, those ideas rise up higher for more people to learn about them, to discuss them, educate themselves about that, and so on. And then, like I said, we show which ideas are most strongly supported, and then we actually mobilize by creating lists of political candidates who represent those ideas and get them elected. But the whole point is that the politicians don't get into positions of power by the monetary alliances that they make to actually get the publicity. The politicians get into power through an algorithm, which means that the politicians are so much more easy to replace because we basically have a whole list of people ready, waiting in line, ready to replace a politician when they screw up. So it's about making politicians really disposable. And like I said, outsourcing the government to the people. Citizen Assembly, it's a broader group for the International Logic Party, because anyone is able to use the Agora networking platform, but party members are like the citizens of Agora, whereas other users are like the residents. And so I got to tell you, it's been a struggle engaging people. I have this joke that I say, give a man a politician and he will he will curse them. Give a man democracy and they will curse you. So, so the problem is that the people actually have to do the democracy. Like there's no other way around it. People have to regularly participate. They have to set aside, you know, regular time out of their week to participate, to come into Congress with others, to educate themselves, to read about that. I mean, frankly, I think 5 hours a week is pretty reasonable for most people, especially if they have a college education on some of these topics. But anyways, so it's been a huge struggle. I got to tell you, our technology is amazing, but at the same time, trying to bring people, we've been bringing amazing people together so far, bringing really people put their best foot forward. It's a tremendously collaborative process, but at the same time, it's a real commitment. It's real work. Democracy is, it's a part-time job. So again, I'm
So yeah, just with an eye on the time. So yeah, thanks. This is a really interesting idea, and I think you've kind of stretched the bounds of the discussion a little bit. So this is really valuable. But just to bring it into the next person who would like to speak, Jan, I saw that you are making some comments. Maybe you would like to jump in.
Yeah, I was just talking to a group of designers who actually recently founded an initiative called Designers for Diversity. And what I've been observing with all the political initiatives that I've been working with is that the way of presenting the work is just not, it doesn't fit to the way of communicating, which is commonly used, especially among those people who we are trying to engage, which are those people who are not that interested in politics. So my proposal would be to focus more on the design side and to focus a lot more on the messaging side and on the outreach side of our ideas, which is what people in the business world have long understood, and I think this is what we are also what should come next for us as well.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jan. I think that's a really valuable point. I just want to point out that everyone who has spoken so far has been a man, and just for the sake of some gender balance in the 21st century, it would be great to have some non-men speak as well. So that's an invitation. And in the meantime, maybe just to build on some of the discussions that we've had also in the previous group, there was a lot of conversation about how do we create unusual coalitions, you know, of more than just the usual suspects, you know, how do we bring people together that are not just the ones that are also already used to that? How do we get young people in? And how do we make this more attractive in general? So is there anyone who would like to respond to this, to some of these thoughts and questions? I don't know, for example, Hannah from OJV, maybe would you like to tell us what OJV is and maybe some thoughts if you have them?
Yeah, sure. I was actually thinking about raising my hand, but on the other hand, sometimes you need a moment to think. But yeah, OGV is the abbreviation, actually ÖGV, for the Austrian National Youth Council, Bundesjugendvertretung. And in the Austrian Youth Council, there's a function that's called European Youth Delegate. So that's me with a colleague at the moment, and we have a mandate for 2 years and going to European conferences and other get-togethers that the National Youth Council is involved in, and we represent them there for 2 years. So maybe a thought concerning unusual coalitions. I must say I'm thinking about that question a lot, because I noticed that there are a lot of young people who are interested in shaping Europe. I mean, we see a few NGOs here. There are so many different organizations and councils that get together. For example, at the European Youth Dialogue, I don't know if you know that format, getting together policymakers and young people to be in dialogue and exchange visions and so on. But the problem I see is that very often it all happens in a certain bubble, like a lot of things. And we are also thinking about that question, how, for example, to bring in a more diverse group of young people who are not already interested in politics, who come from a political background and so on. And I think it's a very difficult question, but one thing I do see is that we have to, as someone before already said, strengthen the feeling for European identity and the value behind participating in different formats. And we have to find ways of reaching the more diverse group. So the way we use channels of today, I don't know, like Instagram and so on, I think we have to maybe use in a bit of a different way, not in the same bubble way, to reach out. So I think the one point is, what do we use and how do we reach out? And the other point is, how do we make it more attractive and make it possible for people to understand what their participation actually means? Because very often in some dialogue settings, you get the feeling that what comes out of it is, well, nothing happens with it. And I think that's very frustrating, even for me. And I think I'm privileged in a way because I can do this, and I come from a background that allows me to do it. But yeah, that's kind of a few thoughts I had on this. Sorry for taking so much time.
No, I think these are some really good points. How do we make people understand the value of their participation? What does their participation mean? And Greta, I saw that you made a comment in the chat. Would you like to pick it up and talk about it? You were commenting. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just to say that Jan's intervention before, yeah, we compared and communication to what business is doing. Yeah, it's a bit sad, but it's true. We need to communicate in a way that speaks to people, that makes it about them, what's in it for them. And as much as I would love that we have European media and we offer pan-European view on issues and so on, I think we need to face the reality. People are informed by local media, national media, like regional media, they're local bubbles. So that's the way in. It's about having local ambassadors. It's about being present at the very, very local level. I'm Italian. I live in Brussels, as I imagine quite a few people live in Brussels. I might look at a national level Italian newspaper like Repubblica, or others that are online like Il Post, but I'm pretty sure that for some of the people that went to high school with me, what they will look at is Corriere Adriatico, which puts sports and local events in the Marche area as the first thing. So yeah, it's really like an effort of going down to the local level, and the same is here in Brussels. My Belgian in-laws, they look at Belgian media, La Libre, Le Soir. They don't look at like Politico. They don't look at The Guardian. They don't look at, not even look at Le Monde. And we're talking of upper middle class environment. So yeah, using local languages, you can use local media.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greta. That's really valuable, and I think it's the first sort of real in-depth view into the media that we've had in this conversation. So we have about 5 minutes left. So then, in terms of tools that we're using, like you know, how we found out about this event happening and how we signed up. I mean, one of the things that we're doing with Alliance for Europe and the European hub that I mentioned is basically wanting to enable people to have a view of what's happening from the local level to the national to the European, to be able to find activists and organizations from across Europe to be able to share tools or develop new projects, find partners. But that's just an example. I guess what I'm getting at is what formats, what tools could we use to make our lives easier? What can we concretely do to create this more attractive content, to really get active at the local level, or to get into the media in the right places? Is there anyone who would like to pick this up and give us some thoughts that we will soon wrap up with? Few of us. Sorry, am I seeing you right? Yeah, few of us. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My idea would be to make it into kind of a game. Some years ago, the thing that was really in at the time was vines and challenges. So to make a game and say, so after this conference, we have to tell what happened to two of our friends that know nothing about European Union matters.
Yes. So what would this game look like? Thank you for being concise, but what can you give us a little bit more of what this game would look
like? So, for example, I don't think it can be institutionalized or have a specific format, but I assume that we all have people close to us that may not know about the European Union and all the stuff that we talk about, but we avoid talking to them. But this is kind of initiating ourselves, giving ourselves some incentive that, oh, that other person will do it as well, so I will try to do it and spread the word.
Yeah. That I think gamification, creating a game, is a really useful avenue to take. Paula, I saw you come up in the chat. I don't know if you'd like to say anything, or otherwise Laura is kind of to close us off.
No, I definitely had considered after Foivas's idea that definitely gamification could be a very, it could be a very good way to bring in a bit of more engagement in politics. I mean, of course, it is very difficult to engage everyone on every single societal level in the EU. So I know of different challenges that have been done in the past to raise awareness of certain causes, like the Ice Bucket Challenge, to raise awareness of a particular disease or disorder, and people usually do take to that on social media to create a sort of chain reaction. So potentially this could be something that is very low costly because it uses a lot of the power in social media and of influencing, particularly if there is very big influencers out there who initiate this. This can also be politicians themselves, for example, but I think influencers that are not specifically institutionalized can have a greater influence, particularly if they are very well liked by most people. So it can be definitely something worth thinking about in order to create more engagement and create better engagement across all different sort of age groups.
Thanks a lot. So our time is up for this session. Thank you all. So what will happen now is Jan, Leonardo, and myself are going to migrate, and you're going to be landed with some new moderators that will then take you through the final session before we go back into the plenary. So thank you all.
But you still get to share your thoughts on the topic of, I think it's campaigners, or was it, you were already, yes, indeed. So see you during the conclusions. And thanks again. This was a very enthusiastic debate.
Hello, everyone. Hi, great to see you. Here's some waves. So, welcome to this last session that we're going to have now. I'm sure we've had some very fruitful, stimulating discussions going on here. And so we're going to be building on what we've been saying so far. First of all, let me just give you an introduction of myself and our co-hosts for the session. I'm Omri Price. I'm the managing director and one of the co-founders of Alliance for Europe. And I'm here together with Jan from Pulse of Europe, who's doing our technical support, and Leonardo Monaco from Humans, who is our discussant for the session. And basically, we will be talking about campaigning and civil society cooperation with a question overarching: how can we activate a wider range of citizens? How can we limit the the barriers to entry? What type of cooperation do we need to use? What kind of tools do we need to use? These are some of the ideas. So, you've had a session about education, about arts and storytelling. Of course, all of these things connect. We'll be focusing on awareness raising and activation. Just to give you a short introduction about Alliance for Europe and what we do, just before I throw it over to Leonardo. We are a young civic startup, a nonprofit that started out 2 years ago with a view of activating citizens towards a more democratic, more sustainable Europe. We wanted to give an answer, a positive answer, to the nationalism and authoritarianism that we've seen on the rise, and to be able to give pro-democratic, pro-European actors a louder voice. And we do this by connecting and creating cooperation between civil society and the nonprofit sector, but also business, media, decision makers, academia. How do we, basically answering the question, how do we bring together all these actors for greater impact? And so this, we work on, civic tech tools, digital communications, and different activation methods, which is how we ended up also being one of the coordinating partners for Citizens Takeover. And one of the tools that we can give an example of that we're developing and we are going to launch at the end of this month is the European Hub for Civic Engagement, which is an online platform that we've developed for sharing tools, sharing information, finding out partnerships across Europe, from the local level to the national level to the European level. So someone who is, let's say, working on citizen participation or climate change in Berlin can see what is happening in Milan or in Rome, can see what is happening in Brussels, can find partners, and can scale up their projects more easily. So this is just an idea. And then as a bit more of a taster about artificial intelligence and citizen participation, I'll throw it over to Leonardo to give us a bit more of a teaser.
Thank you very much, Omri. So the question is how to activate new people on your cause. As probably many of you, many of us are committed in following the European and local debate on artificial intelligence. Of course, it's a matter of policy, it's a matter of regulation, but it's also a matter of instruments that already exist. Most of the time, they're at full disposal of profit organization, in direct marketing or in customer care operations. And we wondered, what if we used artificial intelligence and, for instance, chatbots to make people aware of their citizenship rights. So we came out with this chatbot. I'm going to share in the chat below. And this is based, of course, on artificial intelligence, and it gives the opportunity to every organization to train an algorithm in order to share their experience, share their information, and give them available to potentially a large amount of people who, for instance, visit our websites or go through a landing page. Or, for example, also on chats like WhatsApp, Instagram, or Facebook Messenger. So the example I shared is a very new version of the chatbot. There is a chatbot for many single civil rights issues that we use for some Italian organization at the moment. And this is the very first experiment on activism on participatory democracy. And we are trying actually to involve organizations not only to embed this chatbot on their websites, but mostly to ask them to share their knowledge, to be part of the project by giving us, for example, they're sharing their FAQs and allow people to use their chatbots to be fully aware of their participatory rights under every point of view, so from the European level to the local level. So feel free also to send us an email on the addresses you find on the websites in order to, I don't know, ask us any question, give us any advice on this tool, and why not also to embed this tool on the websites of your organization. And I'm available for any individual chat to focus on any issues about chatbots, AI, and participatory democracy.
Great, thanks a lot, Leo. There. So this kind of gives you an idea of some of the tools that we're talking about, the kind of technological developments that could help more citizens get involved. But we can talk about it, broadly or specifically, whichever way you want to take the discussion. Maybe just a reminder of sort of house rules for the discussion. Feel free to get involved and to lead and shape the discussion. So we're not just observers, we're not just participants, but each one of us here can really shape the way that this is going to go. Remember that to give more people space and to let more people speak in this time limit that we have, please be concise. So if you go way over a minute and a half or so, I will politely ask you to wind down. Please don't take it personally. It's just to enable everyone to speak. And please feel free to promote what you're doing, plug your work, tell us who you are. We want to share good ideas, so don't be shy about telling us, what it is you do. And then if you would like to speak, just raise a hand, as you're familiar with, the Zoom hand if you know Zoom, or otherwise just type in the chat that you would like to speak. And so the first question really is, what are the barriers for people to get involved, and how do we overcome them to really reach all those people who might not even know what the Conference on the Future of Europe is? And Christoph, I see you raising a hand, so please take it away.
Yeah, sorry, this is an old hand from the previous session. So,
sure, would you like to go for it anyway?
Yeah, I very shortly, I liked what you said about when introducing Alliance for Europe, about giving the voice to the man of the streets, to the citizens against populism. I think that even if we are talking here about Europe, it's important. People don't know how to react about the bad guys, if I may say. They would like to voice their opposition to this populist activism, and they will welcome the people how to say their voice against these things. I refer to the in 2016 when the Brexit happened and the debate was flaming and burning in the UK and in Europe as well. Europe was silent. No one would react. And Europe was accused of all the bad things, lies. It was only lying everywhere, and no one would counterattack. And I think now citizens, people people in the street want to counter attack, or if people do that for them, they will appreciate.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting first kind of provocation in terms of we need to have a public debate, right? We can't be silent. Is there anyone who wants to pick up on that and give an idea? I know that we've had many discussions now, but feel free. Jan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, what we have learned in the past for our project, the European Home Parliaments, is that the public debate is very important, but to actually motivate people, you need to get on the personal level. You will have the people you will actually activate themselves, will activate their friends, and I think this sounds like very, very hard, and it takes a lot of resources. But even campaigners for the American elections use tools like that, where they actually talk to their, where they actually have people talking to, like calling others to mobilize them to go vote. And I think like those tools can be picked up in our tool set as well.
Yes, this is a good point. I like where this is going. Lena, I see your comment in the chat. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, the only real European cultural event that we actually all do share is the Eurovision. And one of the great advantages is that each country only has 3 minutes, which means that you can actually squeeze all those countries into the same evening. But we do have a network of public service TV stations. And I was just wondering, as we were speaking here, could all of these wonderful European networks, I also represent the European Bildung Network. We've tried to hijack the Europe Day, by the way, May 8th and 9th, for a European Bildung Day. And Bildung is education in the broader sense, and I'm not going to get into a long lecture about the understanding of that German word, but could we somehow collaborate and get like 2 or 3 hours per week on all the European public service TV stations, for instance, with some sort of joint programming? One thing that has bothered me for years is that, like with the COVID, for instance, I do not see my Minister of Health with the German Minister of Health speaking to the Bulgarian Minister of Health, for instance, on the topic that bothers all of us, or with regards to defense or education or anything. We do not have a broad newscast, program, evening news or anything that brings us together as Europeans and allows us to hear the sort of normal voices of the politicians from other countries or institutions in other countries. So could we promote that somehow together?
That's a really, really interesting and very valuable comment. It reminds me of an initiative that I came across that is based in the Netherlands called Public Spaces, about collaboration between different public broadcasters and media channels to create a more ethical media space and cyberspace for Europe. Let's maybe continue this discussion also offline, and I can connect you to one of the people who is working on that. That would be really interesting. That's great. So I'm seeing all kinds of interesting comments in the chat from Katerina, from Caro, from Esther. So the first person that I have on my screen is Katerina. So would you like to go ahead?
Sure. What I understood from the beginning of the conference was that we are trying to focus on and trying to see how to give a voice to minorities, in fact, right? So what I was thinking about some practices that we use in my association is that to create a safe space for people in minorities, coming from minorities, so that they can actually feel free to express themselves and they feel safe. Because sometimes with minorities and with people coming from coming from minorities, it's difficult to express and to feel like as if they're in a safe space. So as an example, what we do for LGBTQ+ people is that we try to make them feel like they can actually feel safe. So actually using pronouns and nouns and stuff like that. So trying to feel as in, and trying to see what means we can use to get them feel more confident, to make themselves heard in a sense, so that to express their needs and how we can actually make them feel more confident, and how can they express themselves better.
Great. No, thank you for that. That's a very valuable comment as well. Yeah, and does Caro want to come in and add to that, or Esther? Caro?
I just seem to keep saying the same thing all evening, and I would think I'm not going to say it again. Maybe we're also, I'm so deprived from dancing that the only thing that comes to in my mind is music and dancing. But again, I think if we want to reach people, like somebody said earlier, I think it's really good to reach people there. I think Jan said that it's people to reach people directly, and but everybody in the group has heard me say the same thing twice already, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I still think it's a good idea.
I agree with you that music and art is a good idea, and maybe we can connect that also. How do we connect these artists and creators and music festivals to the kind of campaigning that we want to do? And that's something that we can respond to. Maybe Esther, would you like to pick it up? Or
Sure. I think this is great. As I used to work a lot with Creative Europe and also connecting artists over Europe, and now I'm working in citizen participation. So I'm gonna see how to link those together. But one of the things what really resonated with me is like bring it to the people, and that's been said when we talked about youth, when we talked also about artists, and I think it's the same when you talk about citizen participation or engaging them, is that you have to, well, either through parties or concerts or other ways. Something that Cara said is you have to reach them on something that resonates with them, so whether that's their neighborhood. But when we talk about the future of Europe, something that I've noticed when you talk about the future, and for example, if you want to reach an elderly generation, then sometimes it's hard to say something that's really concrete, or that you think, oh, this will contribute to the discussion, especially when you talk to politicians. For example, when you ask like, what kind of future do you want? It sounds a bit serious, but when you translate it and say, what kind of future, what kind of world do you want to, like, what do you want your grandchildren to achieve? And I think the translation of Europe into questions that people can relate to is really important, and it's also something that we sometimes tend to forget. And because we're all professional Europeans here, I think it's also something that we should keep reminding ourselves, is that that my neighbor might not have the same perspective or knowledge as I do, and that even though we try to reach them, we sometimes also do the same things that we accuse politicians or others of, is that we use a certain language and we make certain assumptions. And I think that it's a challenge maybe for us. Like, it's not a challenge for citizens, but it's a challenge for us to kind of to see where our blind spots lie. Yeah, so that's my main thing.
Yeah, no, this is I love this phrase, professional Europeans, and I really think you hit something valuable there about asking questions that people can relate to. So the future of Europe is a really big concept. The future of your grandchildren or your children, if you have them especially, is much, much easier to understand and to relate to, and much more compelling, right? I think that's really valuable. And just to come back to this point on minorities, I just wanted to throw a little bit of something in there, especially given what we saw in the US last week, is how we conceptualize minorities is also very interesting, because basically minorities in the traditional sense, if we're honest about it, is just, people who are not white men, right? because if you're a white man, then supposedly you're not a minority, and if you're anything else, then you are. But in fact, white men are a minority, which is why all those people who you know, created this terrorist attack at the Capitol last week are so angry. So I think how we conceptualize that is also quite important. And it also informs how we can create a truly inclusive environment. Now, I'm seeing an interesting comment here from Coulter Labor. Trial and error. So whoever's operating under that name, feel free to jump in. And then I have Karsten Berg afterwards. I see your hand. So.
It was, thank you. Hi. It was an answer to Caro about the parties, because we have tried also other ways to bring people together in the times when the idea of a lot of random people appearing in the same place is not possible anymore. We had a lot of Zoom meetings with how a neighborhood work or how a community work looks like in the times when the COVID is dictating its own rules. So there were a couple of small ideas. I will just stop here.
Okay, yeah, if you want to come back in with those ideas, please do. Karsten, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, thanks. Since it's about campaigning here, right? That's I just wanted to.
Yes, indeed, about how we raise awareness and activate people.
Exactly. Thanks. So in order to be inclusive, and I think we need to look at the methods and the instruments which we have at hand. And the best method to be inclusive, I think, are the randomly citizens assemblies. I'm not sure if everyone knows here, this is the big topic right now across Europe. I'm also right now involved in this very moment also with the German parliament, where we organize citizens, randomly selected citizens assembly, where we meet online with 160 people. And we also will see this at the European level. Yeah, so that's something we are pushing for as Citizens Take Over Europe. And there you can really work with minorities, because this is not just a random selection, but it is a stratified sample. That means you have different age groups, educational levels, income levels. So you have probably also some populists or whatsoever. So, but the problem there is that you only have a tiny sample. And the big challenge for us as Citizens Take Over, in my view, is to really reach out to a large scale of number of citizens. How do we do that? And for that, I think we need to develop the right campaign methods. And I think what you presented with the House Parliaments, I think that's a very smart way, because this can be very decentralized. Then another method here are the online campaigning platforms, which you might know, like WeMove, Avas, and these kind of groups. They have a huge database, and we work with them, of course, also within Citizens Take Over and also within my own organization, the European Citizens Initiative. Only Avas has about 13 million email addresses. Of course, these are only email events, but you can, in the meantime, they started as petitions, as online petitions, but in the meantime, they use them a lot to have physical meetings as well. So if we want to reach out large scale, and I think that's what we need at European level, we should really think about these kind of methods as well. That was my key point. I think we can combine them very well, but we should really not forget about reaching out large scale. That's the big challenge at European level, especially.
Yeah, so I think that's again, yeah. How do we scale up to that? That's the big question, so to speak. Sorry, I'm just scouring the chat in the meantime. But I mean, do we see any connection between some of the ideas that we've been discussing here in terms of, you know, music festivals, creating, you know, more compelling questions using more compelling language? In a previous discussion, we also talked about gamification. How do we create games out of this? Where do we see these kinds of ideas going, and how do we create, you know, one of the terms that came out in an earlier discussion was unusual coalitions. So coalitions that are not just the usual suspects that usually work together, but how do we combine, you know, the music festivals with the participatory democracy NGOs? And I see that Jakub is raising his hand, so go ahead.
Okay, just quick point on organizing festivals and parties. It's been already mentioned here a couple of times, but when was it? I think it was before last parliamentary elections. So this will be in 2018 or 2019? 2019. In 2019, there was this festival called Democracy Alive that was organized in Netherlands. It was organized on one of the islands in the north, and they brought a lot of organizations from Brussels into this small municipality called Texel. And eventually they wanted local people to learn a little bit more about how you say, they wanted local people to learn a little bit more about what is happening in Brussels bubble, etc., etc. But pretty much everything failed in terms of communication. There was not much communication going on from organizations that were in Brussels bubble, and they couldn't connect with Dutch people. So I would say, like, over here, when we are organizing this sort of parties, we should also make it a little bit interactive, so people will feel more included instead of giving them just some flyers and telling them what we are doing next to our stands. So that's something that I just wanted to throw in.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for that. And I was actually also at this Democracy Alive festival as one of the usual suspects that get involved in these kinds of things. And indeed, there is a gap between, you know, the outreach that these organizations have, and, you know, dealing with you know, local people who live on this northern Dutch island. You know, so I see what you're saying. We're going to have to wrap up in the next 2 minutes or so. And so, Esther, I see that you've made a point in the discussion there, responding to Karsten. Maybe you can tell us, you can say what you just said, what you explain your comment to us.
Yeah, sure. Not a problem. Yeah, I think that you can see a lot of, there's a lot of talk about catching the deliberative wave. And I think that a lot of the things that we're developing are, so to speak, they can work together. So like Jan has mentioned also his initiative, which I think is also in real time, like we're meeting now. And you also see, and I think that's also what you mentioned in the beginning, Omri, is the kind of the platforms that bring people together and keep them engaged. So next to the campaigns, I think there's maybe a link to make between campaigns, between meeting in real life, meeting on a Zoom such as this, and also connect them with what I call constructive social media in my comments. So there's a lot of us, including me, with Sovocracy.org, are building like this constructive kind of social media platforms where people can also engage and connect in their own time. So and there's several ways to do that, and I just think that it's, you know, that's one of the other ways to connect also a larger audience across borders, because we're all, or used to be, on Facebook, maybe Instagram, TikTok, but then there's this initiative to create more constructive platforms for political or social debate. And yeah, I just wanted to point out that those exist and that we can connect to them.
Excellent. So that's a really good point also to wrap up with in terms of constructive communications. I think, Esther, if you don't mind, post a link to Sovocracy. I've heard about you and recommended to speak to you, actually. So hi. but feel free to post a link so that everyone can see. We will then compile it. We're taking notes and so on. And like we said, this is being recorded. We'll provide feedback to everyone. So yeah, this is pretty much the end of the session. And I would like to really for joining us through all this, making all these really interesting points. I really very much hope that we will be able to continue this conversation through more events, more of these kinds of sessions, and start to use some of the innovative ideas like gamifications and different types of messaging, different types of involvement from music festivals and the like. And we're going to be moved in about 30 seconds or so by Virginia back into the plenary, where we will have a bit of a wrap up and we will kind of summarize everything, and then everyone can go off and enjoy their evening. And then before we get sucked out, I just also want to thank Jan for taking notes with us for the last 3 sessions. Was one of the
but it's okay.
part of the
Okay. Hello.
Amazing. We're back.
We're back.
I'm gonna start the recording, Sundus.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, I see we're all back here. Thanks again. We've had really some really fruitful and enthusiastic, multi-layered discussions. And just to finish on what I was mentioning right before on the topic of how to involve artists and creators, also because Michael Sinclair here mentioned the importance of, or the idea of maybe creating a film or visuals on unity and friendship in between Europeans. I was about to share this video campaign that we did as Alliance for Europe ahead of the 2019 European elections. So I'll just put the link here, and it's called Vote for Friendship. So just to echo what we were saying right before. And I'll give a quick summary of so many good points that were mentioned. So how to involve influencers, artists, storytellers in helping us shape the European narrative. One of the first points that came was that artists have been the people most affected by the pandemic. They received very hard decisions, and yet they didn't have the possibility to assert their points of view. And so the financial aspect really came about quite a lot, that artists need compensation. The cultural sector needs to be evaluated and recognized for all of the hard work that it does. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, it showed that it was one of the sectors that wasn't considered that crucial, when it is actually that crucial in our lives. There was a mention of how a way to involve artists overall is to actually engage them on specific topics. So this is also linked to this issue of how the sector suffered during the pandemic, is the fact that artists need social protection and they need to feel involved in topics that they produce art on, things like things that are tangible, that touch them. For example, gender equality, LGBTIQ rights. So it's not enough to want to engage artists by telling them, help us tell the story of Europe. We have to give them tangible topics and tangible areas where they can be involved. One other thing that was mentioned as an example of a solution to engage artists more is the example of Europe Month, which in May was this month that culminated with a European Art Award, and overall had a span of different artistic performances. So that was a good way to promote art during a month that also promotes the European Union. So to combine the two. So this is in relations to how to involve these people in the European narrative, but of course also comes the issue of the challenges. So I already quoted the challenge of the pandemic, but this was very specific, and we hope that we really learned from it and that the European Union learns from it and that it doesn't reproduce in the same way ever again. But in terms of the overall challenges, the main one is that apparently creativity seems to be this matter that is rather individual and not something that is done necessarily for a political purpose, because there are many artists who do it, who practice their art when they are at home on their own, and that it's the point of art is that, or at least one of the points of art is to escape, let's say, the necessity to give to the community and actually do it for yourself. So this sort of not individualistic approach, but really a quote was, artists are about themselves. So not that they're selfish, but they do it for themselves. So the challenge is how to make artists and creators understand that in any case, everything they do is for a purpose, and that since art is visual, it's also it's a form that will be shared with an audience, even just a few people, then it has that purpose in itself. And again, we had examples, concrete examples of art that are used for a purpose, even if at the start it was just for art. For example, caricatures have a huge potential, but also films and videos. There was a time when filmmakers were mostly focused on the sole purpose of making films, but nowadays we see that in the European sphere, but also worldwide in politics and just in all fields, people want to see videos because words can be tiring at the end of the day, and a more visual interactive format can be effective in conveying the message that we want to pass by. I'm just reading through the notes as I speak, but yeah, so I mentioned caricatures, filmmaking, this came up a lot, the necessity to reach out to filmmakers and to use communications as a form of art. Then at some point we drifted on the topic of the fact that people in general, not just artists, need to understand that when they engage in the European public discourse, they're not engaging with something that is far from them or that is purely political. They are engaging with the notion of humanity. We are all human beings and we have powers in place because we have systems of governance, we have a European democracy, we are all part of this same area, same world where we live. And so we are simply doing our part by engaging. It's not that artists are being forced into engaging politically. Politics are just part of their lives. European politics are part of their lives. It would just be ideal if they actually are motivated to use their forms of art to help us shape this narrative. But as I'm reading through all of this, what I'm thinking that I'll probably do is really do a proper summary after our meeting, and hopefully many of you reach out to us so that we can send you also these notes, because as I was saying, we want to reflect upon all of this and actually use the concrete outputs as a coalition to actually engage with artists and creators. So we want to use your ideas and implement them. And there is one hopeful idea that transpired in the last meeting, and as I said, which is to create a film about the notion of a union, especially in the light of what happened after Brexit. So we'll also explore that, depending also on financial and other means. And yeah, for now, I think that that's it on our end. And I pass on to Thomas.
Rosalie will be the one because I was busy moderating, so she will share her insights.
Thomas was busy moderating and I was busy typing. So I have the conclusions about the discussion about educational citizenship. So everybody was actually very aware of the fact that national educational programs are very rigid and not easy to change. So there's a need to look for other options. Luckily for us, there were very good ideas that were brought up during the debate. First of all, we spoke about speaking the language of the students, try to adapt your content, your methods to them, use examples that they can use in their daily life, keep your language as simple as possible, start with the basics and so on, but also literally, somebody talked about becoming bilingual to teach European matters in the whole European Union. And to go further with the contents, the methods, it's very important to use game elements, fun methods, allow students to be part of some sort of adventure, give them an experience. For example, somebody give the example of role plays. You can do a role play of the European Council, the European Parliament. So you need to involve the students more, but it's also very important that the teachers themselves are being trained. And this can be a role for the European Parliament, for example. We also need to involve teachers more that are already doing a lot. And a very nice example of a program that is very interesting is EPAS, the European Parliament Ambassador School. And it's an initiative taken by the European Parliament trying to involve students and teachers, encouraging and learning teachers on how they can teach about the European Union. But then somebody pointed out, which was also true, that in this program, every event happens inside of the school. So we need more visibility. We need to reach out, we need to open up more. We need to, for example, reach out to also NGOs. And then the focus also needs to be not on creating new tools or new websites or new guidelines and so on, because we have millions of them in the European Union. But we need to give the teacher some sort of manual which contains everything in an accessible, central and attractive way. Also, we talked about that the focus doesn't need to be the content. The EU can define what you need to teach as a teacher. You can say, you need to say this or that about the history or the member states. You just need to give the teachers tools, ideas, good practices on how to teach about the European Union. Then also a very interesting debate was about bringing people together, organizing citizens assemblies, youth assemblies, but then I also thought about the European Youth Event, which is actually a very good example of a youth assembly. And also a very nice idea is go where the young people are and also involve specific target groups. Somebody pointed out that there's a platform called Twitch that the gamers are using where you can live stream what you are playing at the moment. And this is actually being used by politicians, for example, also to give readings or to give their ideas. So that's actually very interesting to find new ways to get to the people, target specific groups, and actually try to involve them more in their world. And so for us as a coalition, we need to stress that there's no need for more money and structure for educational programs. And yeah, we need to give them concrete proposals. So I think this is what I remembered from the 3 breakout rooms. I thought it was very, very interesting. I enjoyed the debate a lot. So thank you very much for your input. And I will give the word now to, I don't know who, who is going to give the conclusions on the 3rd breakout room.
Hi, yeah, I'll jump. Hi, I'm Omri. All of you heard me blabber in the different breakouts. And Jan, please jump in if you want to add anything to what I am going to say. I know that everyone's had a fun and interesting time, I hope, so I won't keep you too long. Just to give you some of the highlights, it was really interesting to see how the discussion developed between the different groups. We talked at the very beginning about building unusual coalitions. How do we bring people together who are not the usual suspects? And how do we bring in young people? And how do we communicate to the people who really don't know what the EU is doing in their day-to-day, which is the overwhelming majority of people. The immediate sort of powerful point that was made in terms of narrative is we need to create a sense of shared challenges. Europeans need to understand that they actually understand that they actually have similar problems in their lives, and we also need a lively public debate. So this idea of an attack and a counterattack in the public debate. So not to be shying away from that. Europe and pro-Europeans shouldn't be silent. Then we had this very interesting idea about gamification. You know, how do we create campaigns and awareness raising or participation methods that are a game, you know, that build on this idea of gamification. We also had a very interesting mention of an initiative called Designers for Diversity. Basically, designers basically creating more effective communication avenues for these sort of ideas. And we had some specific mentions also about you know, policy dialogue formats, citizen assembly formats that are being used, whether it's in the UK or in Germany, and also this sort of call to action saying we need to really schedule actions, schedule campaigns across Europe, and keep ourselves moving. We also talked about the need for legal structures like a European association statute so that we can actually have European level communications. And we talked about using artificial intelligence tools with Leo, who was one of our co-hosts, talking about a chatbot. And then, especially in the last room, and you, well, for me was the last room. I think it was room A. We talked about festivals and dancing and connecting, really campaigning with having fun. So this is also something that we had in the first session. Making it fun is really important, and remembering that, you know, many of us in this conversation here are so-called professional Europeans. What we need to do is to put ourselves in the shoes of our neighbors who are not, gamify things, create compelling questions. So rather than talking about the future of Europe, we need to ask people about the future of their own children. To make it real for them and more emotionally compelling, and have constructive social media. So using public broadcasting in a new and interesting way, connecting with local media and with national media on European issues. And I'm going to stop there. We're going to try and package all this and send it over to you afterwards, like Sundus said. So yes, Sundus, back to you, I guess, for a wrap up.
Yes, indeed. A very quick wrap up. Hang in there with us. I'll actually pass the floor to Laura, who has something super cool to tell us about, and then Daniela for the conclusion.
Yeah, thanks, Sundus, and thanks everyone. I participated just you know, as a participant today, but actually I'm also part of the CTOE. And so as a final remark for today's session, I just wanted to share with you quickly in the chat a survey, or well, survey doesn't sound like a very sexy word. It's more of a sort of an open platform where you can contribute to your ideas regarding sort of how we can contribute to making the European Union, as well as the Conference on the Future of Europe, better. And this is a very small consultation that takes about 15 minutes of your time. It's really not that long, and it's kind of different from different surveys that you're used to, because it really takes into consideration your own stories, so your own narratives. And because we want to continue shaping these ideas behind how we can bring your proposals to the table, and making this very accessible to everyone, we'd like to ask you to complete this consultation, as well as share the link with your network as well, if you can. So that we can have as many responses as possible. This will also be public on the CTOE website, so you can always access it there. But for the time being, if you can also bring together these ideas to this this consultation, that would be really great. So we can then move forward with making your ideas concrete later on in the procedure for making a change, for changing and from bringing about decision making. So thank you very much for participating in this consultation.
Thank you, Laura. And I pass on to Daniela to just swiftly announce the session of tomorrow. And yes, please do check the link that Laura sent in the chat. I'll actually write it here again, just in case. And I pass on to Daniela.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks. I know it's been a long night, so I'll keep it really short. Tomorrow the event continues, but we'll have a different focus. So tomorrow will be our official public hearing on our real petition that we submitted to the European Parliament last October on the Conference on the Future of Europe. We demanded as a coalition that it needs to be much more citizen-led and citizen-focused. So we will have an opportunity to speak with MEPs directly who are working on the conference, and with a cabinet member of Commission Vice President Suica, and to really hear about the current state of play of the conference, but also tell them from our side where the opportunities are for citizens to be at the really at the core of this experience. So that's the first half of tomorrow, and then the second half we will discuss how we can have a permanent mechanism of citizens' deliberation in the EU, so that randomly selected citizens' assemblies are not just the conference, but also we can use that experience to introduce permanent EU citizens' assemblies. So we have a really great list of experts from all across Europe who will tell us their experiences and expertise of how randomly selected EU citizens' assemblies could look like and work in Europe. So I hope to see you all tomorrow. That's starting at 4 p.m. Until 5 p.m. Central European time. And it will be at the same link, same Zoom room. Please don't stay here until 4 p.m. tomorrow. Please get some sleep, but come back then in this Zoom room and join us in this link tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for this. Looking forward to your session tomorrow. And yes, thanks everyone for being here. I won't keep you too long because I think we all need to go either have dinner or a walk or anything that it is we need to do now. But really, thanks for such a fruitful session of World Cafes, and hopefully see many of you tomorrow, and stay safe and be joyful. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
For those who would like to continue the discussion, I would like to invite you to my Zoom room, 2323002323. I'd like to show you the most powerful networking technology in the world.